WWE's go-to PR line for the longest time has always been, "We put smiles on people's faces." Having impeccable PR for WWE has always been a huge priority for them, which is why anything to do with views on race, religion and politics is incredibly rare within the WWE. However, sometimes stuff happens and WWE has to publicly admit their fault and apologise. So here are 10 of those instances where WWE had no option but to publicly apologise in real life. Let's begin with good old Mohammed Hassan, and most of you already know what the deal was here. An Italian American with a great body who was showing really good signs, WWE took one look at and said, yep, he's the perfect controversial Arab character we've been looking for, and in doing so ruined his whole wrestling career in under 2 years. Hassan's character was a militant-like Arab who expressed hatred to America for the hate he and his people got after 9/11. However, the fateful night that would lead to the end of his career and lead to WWE having to apologise was an episode of SmackDown in July 2005. Hassan's manager Daivari had just lost a match to The Undertaker when Hassan got on his knees, appeared to be praying, and then out came a bunch of guys dressed like terrorists and beat up and choked out The Undertaker. They then carried out Daivari like a sacrificed soldier. On the face of it, an angle like this wasn't that special in the world of wrestling, but problems began when just 3 days later the London bombings took place. After that, the pressure from the TV networks and media started. The TV network UPN had pressured WWE to keep Hassan off their show, effectively deleting him from SmackDown. Hassan would have another match against The Undertaker, which he lost, and that was it for him. WWE sent him to developmental to perhaps change his character, but that wasn't to be, and they fired him not too long after. So he effectively got fired for being too good at his job. It was all WWE's direction and choice, and he suffered the consequences. Next up is the time LaMelo Ball said the N-word on Monday Night Raw. If there's one thing WWE loves as much as good PR, it's having celebrities featured on their shows. This past WrestleMania is enough evidence for that. However, one family they won't be inviting back anytime soon is the Ball family. This happened back in 2017 when LaVar Ball, some former basketball player, and his kids were in the ring in a light-hearted segment with The Miz. The idea was the usual, that The Miz would threaten to beat up this old man when another WWE superstar, in this case Dean Ambrose, would come to save the day. This segment went off the rails when LaVar Ball took off his shirt and started acting crazy, and then one of his kids started laughing and on a live mic said, "Beat that N-word ass, not once but twice." Apparently Vince and others were furious backstage, and WWE quickly issued this statement. Although Vince previously had said the N-word on live WWE TV before, remember this?
Let's hold it down, trying to take care of business. Keep it up, I'm a nigga!
Nevertheless, this incident was in 2017, which was a completely different WWE and time, and this was the last thing they would have wanted. Next up is the time Vince McMahon personally apologised for firing CM Punk on his wedding day. Yep, that's right. Back in January 2014, CM Punk walked out of the WWE. He infamously told Triple H and Vince he'd had enough and was going home. According to Punk at the time, it was just a number of things from injuries, frustration with storylines, all building up to a point where he needed to leave. And at that point, he didn't completely quit WWE and would have been open to coming back. However, that all changed as revealed in a podcast with Colt Cabana that on the day of his wedding, he got his termination papers in the mail, which he claimed was very calculated and deliberate. Vince, however, had a different view of the situation when discussing it himself. On the Stone Cold podcast, when asked about this, Vince said that he would like to apologise and that in a big corporation, the legal people don't always know what the talent are doing. He mentioned it was just a coincidence and personally apologised again for it. Given WWE's history with things like this, I'm not too sure if it was just a coincidence, but hey, fast forward to today and we have CM Punk back and Vince is effectively fired from his own company. Staying on the theme of people getting fired, next up is the time Triple H and Stephanie had to apologise to Mickie James after James was fired from the WWE and then sent her belongings in a trash bag. In 2021, Mickie James along with a number of others were released from the WWE, apparently due to budget cuts. Days later, Mickie posted this on Twitter showing a trash bag in a box with Mickey written on a piece of tape. This blatant disrespect went somewhat viral on Twitter, with Triple H and Stephanie tweeting this to apologise. They mentioned the person responsible for this has been let go from the WWE. Turns out it wasn't just James, but everyone who got released during that wave had got the same treatment. Clearly not a good look for WWE at the time. Next up is the time WWE apologised for their Chris Benoit tribute show. What remains one of the darkest moments in WWE's history is the time Chris Benoit committed suicide after the double murder of his son and wife. On the day WWE reported that Chris had died, WWE had cancelled the original plan for Monday Night Raw that night and instead replaced the show with a 3-hour tribute show for Chris Benoit. This featured past matches, highlights and interviews from WWE superstars remembering Chris. Now, in what was incredibly unfortunate timing was that during this time, WWE was running a storyline where Vince McMahon himself was dead, after he apparently had died in a limo explosion a few weeks before, and so this show was supposed to be a memorial show for him. Now, of course, given these events, that whole storyline was axed, and Vince opened the show explaining that, and then announced that in reality Chris Benoit, his wife Nancy, and their son Daniel were dead. He then went on to say that this show will be now dedicated to Chris. Now at the time this was very fresh, no one really knew the details of what had happened. However, apparently while the show was still ongoing, reports began to surface that this was being treated as a double murder-suicide and that no other suspects were being looked for. So over the next few days after this show, WWE aired 2 statements where Vince stated that the current details of the incident were not known during the tribute show and that other than his current comments there will be no mention of Chris Benoit in WWE. WWE would then go on and completely wipe Chris Benoit's existence and treat him like he never existed, and this remains true till this day. Well, apart from that time he showed up in the crowd in the Thunderdome. For once, I think WWE wasn't in the wrong for the show, given they obviously had no idea what really had happened at the time. Moving on, at number 6 is the time WWE had to apologise to the citizens and government of Brazil after Chris Jericho denigrated the Brazilian flag during a live event in Sao Paulo. Back in 2012, during a match with CM Punk in Brazil, Chris Jericho, a heel at the time, in an unplanned spot got the Brazilian flag which Punk had brought to the ring, crumpled it up, threw it on the floor and kicked it. Doesn't sound like something that bad in my opinion, but apparently it's a criminal offence in Brazil. Incredibly, the local law enforcement stopped the match right there and then and offered Jericho a choice to apologise to the arena right away or go to jail. Obviously he chose to apologise and did so to the crowd, and so the police let the event continue. WWE would then suspend Chris Jericho for 30 days and offer up their own apology online. Sticking with the theme of flags, next up is the time where Big Show caused some trouble involving the Russian flag. This was back in 2014 when Big Show was feuding with Rusev during his Russian heel phase. Rusev would be in the ring and have the giant Russian flag drop behind him in the ring during his entrances. However, during one segment on Raw, Big Show would tear down the flag to the floor. Now unlike the previous one, this didn't happen in Russia and was also a planned spot, and so again didn't appear to be that big of a deal. But after the show, WWE did issue a statement apologising to the Russian people for the disrespect to their flag. Fans actually criticised WWE for doing this, but clearly WWE wants no smoke with Mr. Putin and Russia. At number 8, next to the time where Vince McMahon had to apologise for the failed launch of the WWE Network in the UK. Over a decade ago, WWE announced the WWE Network, a new revolutionary streaming service for all things WWE. It launched in the US in February of 2014, followed by parts of Asia and other European countries later that year. However, for the UK and Ireland, 1st of October 2014 was the former launch date. Only that didn't happen. As said, launch was moved to the 3rd of November. Then, just 20 minutes before the 8 PM launch time, WWE announced an indefinite delay for its UK launch for some reason. Vince then made a video apology to the UK fans ahead of the WWE Network finally being available in the UK and Ireland in January of 2015. This next one is a more recent one. This is the time where WWE apologised after using footage of Auschwitz in a WrestleMania promo video. In a promotional video for the WrestleMania 39 match between Rey Mysterio and his son Dominic, WWE used this image of Auschwitz when speaking about Dominic being a hardened criminal. Dominic's gimmick at the time was that he was a criminal who had just got out of jail. This was a really bad look for WWE in today's day and age. WWE has a huge media and content team, and for someone to add in this image to the video and for the video to go through the whole approval process without anyone spotting it was incredible. It went viral online and WWE issued the following statement saying they had no knowledge of this and it was removed immediately and that they apologised for it. This video has now been edited out of all footage if you go back and look. Definitely one they want to forget. And finally, last up is the time where Vince McMahon apparently and kind of apologised for the death of Owen Hart. The death of Owen Hart remains one of the most sad and tragic moments in WWE's history. A really talented wrestler who tragically fell to his death on a WWE pay-per-view. I think most will know what had happened. Hart was supposed to make his entrance flying in from the rafters with a grapple line before being lowered to just above the ring. This unfortunately did not go to plan and Owen would end up falling 78 feet to his death. The live TV audience didn't see this, nor did much of the live crowd as the arena was darkened for a pre-taped video on the screens. WWE announcers then detailed what had happened and stressed that it was serious and not part of the show. Owen would die just minutes later. Incredibly, and in a real tasteless act, after this had happened, WWE continued the pay-per-view show just as planned. Sometime later, Martha Hart, the widow of Owen, would file a wrongful death lawsuit against Vince, the WWE and others. The lawsuit was settled when WWE paid Martha an $18 million settlement. Apparently during the hearing, Vince McMahon apologised to Martha and offered to take care of her and her family. Till this day, Martha continues to hold WWE responsible for Owen's death, believing the death was caused by WWE's negligence, while the WWE stresses it was a complete accident. This is also why even now WWE has no real rights to Owen's likeness and image rights, and Martha refuses to do any business with them. And there you have it. Those are 10 times where WWE had to apologise in real life. Let me know down below if you can think of some other times where they've had to do this. Thanks for watching and I'll catch you on the next one.